Today we're going to be doing a tier list of Rise Against Discography. And today I'm joined here with Ross. Say hello,
Hey guys.
Ross. And we're taking inspiration from the YouTuber Rocked. We're going to be going over all 8 studio albums, and the tiers will be Diamond, Gold, Silver, Bronze, Aluminum, and Trash. And I highly doubt that either of us are going to put anything in Trash. Rise Against is personally my second favorite band of all time after Green Day.
And my
And
first favorite band of all time.
I've been a fan since around 2012. After Endgame came out, I was ready for the black market to come out. I was a fan I've been anticipating the release of 3 albums now.
As have
Including the
I.
next one. So let's just begin and start with the Unraveling.
Yeah, so by this point, the Unraveling came out in 2001. And, under the name Rise Against, yeah, they were a new band to the masses. But if you really knew them and, knew the other bands that they'd been in, they really weren't a new band. Because by this point, at least, I believe Tim and their bass player, Joe, they had been playing together for a while, like a couple years, and I mean they had put out the EP under the
Transistor
name
Revolt.
Transistor Revolt, and that's the name they were originally going to go with. But then they decided to rebrand themselves as Rise Against, and Tim has said in interviews before that it was pretty much an arbitrary name when they picked it, but throughout the years, the more music they were writing, the more stuff they were writing about, it took on a new meaning, and they made that name mean something. And then that's where we come to the Unraveling. And if you've heard 88 Fingers Louie, for example, you'd
Especially
understand.
the album Back on the Streets.
Yeah, back on the
Especially that album.
by 88 Fingers Louie. If you heard that album and knew 88 Fingers Louie, you could understand why some of these songs were written the way that they were. I mean, there's some tracks that are on here that are just a minute long, minute and a half long. And for me personally, even now after listening to it multiple times, um, I remember the very first time I heard it, I kind of just dismissed it. But after listening to it multiple times since then, for me, they were really raw. They were an extremely raw band at this point, and I think you can hear that. I think Tim was a fantastic screaming vocalist. He had great unclean vocals. His fry screams where he went really high were insane. I think his natural singing voice wasn't as developed at this point
Yeah, it
because
wasn't as developed.
it
I
wasn't as
agree.
developed at this point because they were, fairly new band. He was really young when they did this album. And I mean, but the musicianship, it's spot on this record. And
Yeah.
I think the musicianship is spot on, but I think the songwriting in general, it was good already. I think they escalated it with the next few albums that we're going to talk about.
I think about the Unraveling that musically, it does have a very similar feeling to 88 Fingers Louie with the Stained Glass and Marbles, the very short songs Remain of Summer Memories, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Uh, those short songs, they are kind of forgettable. And that goes back to the Back on the Streets 88 Finger Louie feel. Tim's it is his worst vocal performance. I think in their discography, he has much better screams. If you go back to Baxter, their album in 1996, where that's Tim's first performance. I think he's 16 or 17 in that. His vocals are not good at all. But then you get to the year 2000, where his metalcore band, The Killing Tree, makes their first EP. And that's when his actual unclean vocals, that's where the training actually starts, and he becomes a really good unclean vocalist, but his clean vocal skills aren't quite there yet. You agree?
Yeah.
The songs, there are some songs, most of them in the beginning, in the most of the songs in the middle are quite forgettable, like The Art of Losing.
Mhm.
Like, I know the songs, I just can't remember like the song title. I can't remember the lyrics, but I know exactly the vocal melody. It's just kind of forgettable in some spots. But like songs like Alive and Well, My Life Inside Your Heart, uh, Great Awakening, 6 Ways Till Sunday, Ever Changing. These songs, I know every word. I remember them perfectly. Some songs are absolutely top tier, but some are just kind of eh.
Yeah, I
You
would
agree?
say personally, when listening to this, there are some very forgettable tracks on here, but the songs where it actually feels like full songs, and it seems like they actually, they were more focused on some of these. The high tracks on this album, I mean, the high points on this album with some of those great songs that you just named off are really, really high, and like it almost like you could take off any of the other tracks that are like a minute long that don't even really feel like songs, and you could just give me like the full songs that they did do that actually felt legit, and you could just say that that's the album, and I'd be perfectly fine with that. And that's like the issue for me about it. Like I think for a debut album for 2001, for that point in time, I think for any like hardcore punk band, I think this was like the lyricism in this record, just like other records. I think it's still spot on, the lyricism for sure. Um, but yeah, I feel like for a debut album at that point in time, I feel like it was decent, but it still wasn't where they wanted to be yet. But I think at the same time, you could see what they're trying to do, and you can see that good things are going to come from this band.
Overall, we'll do overall now. Uh, how do you rank it?
Overall for me, um I would say this one, I'd probably actually put this in bronze.
I have bronze also.
The reason why is because, like I said, even though there are some tracks on here that like are forgettable and like don't even really feel like full songs, and his clean singing isn't great, it's not where it develops later in their discography. I think both the unclean vocals and the lyricism in this record are both spot on. The lyricism in this record, like song like Faint Resemblance, man, like when he gets to the line about words spilling from his mouth, like I think that line paired with what comes before it, it's so eloquently written.
Yeah, and this album, you can tell the lyricism. It's not very experienced in a lot of places. Where later on you can tell it becomes more poetic.
Yeah, I think yeah, the lyricism, there are points on this record where it genuinely impresses me. But yeah,
Yeah,
it's not exactly where they want to be at or where Tim wants to be at, since he's the one who writes their lyrics. But I can see where he was trying to go, and for that reason, I would put in bronze.
yeah. So overall, we put in bronze. Okay, now we'll go to Revolutions Per Minute from 2003. Okay, this was their second album, and it was also on Fat Records. Their second album, The Unraveling, was also on Fat Records. This album was the only one with Todd Money, and he was also in the Killing Tree with Tim, and I think that kind of shows in it. I think it's their most metallic album, most metal, with songs like Dead Ringer and To the Core, very metal, and I feel like those could have been like songs on from The Killing Tree.
Yeah, this album it was such, man, by this point, like I remember still listening to this album again now, and it's just such a step up from The Unraveling in
It's a
every way.
massive setup.
It's such
Massive.
Yeah, it's such a step up in every way. The vocals are better across the board from Tim. The writing I think is better in general. Um yeah, it is their most metallic album. I do think it's their heaviest record. Um like those songs you just mentioned, and there are tons of screaming vocals. I think there's actually more unclean vocals on this thing than there are cleans.
I don't know about that. There are a lot of uncleans, though. I literally have written down this album is a step up from The Unraveling in every aspect.
Yeah, like literally, I don't know what happened to this band between just 2 years, or not even that, because they started the writing process for this, um, like obviously before this record came out, because they had to do all the recording, mixing, mastering, all that. So I don't know what happened with their influential, status, what they were influenced by, but it clearly shows because, like the Unraveling, what I noticed is that the difference between the Unraveling and this record is like has a lot more interesting instrumental breaks and a couple solos here and there. And honestly, I mean, they have other solos later in their discography, but some of the ones on this record are, in my opinion, among the best that they've ever
Yeah,
written.
I wrote Blood Red, White, and Blue, and Like the Angel,
Yeah,
especially those two songs.
yeah, the solo and Like the Angel, man, it's incredible. It's just it fits the music. It doesn't overstay its welcome, and it does what it's supposed to do.
I think that the solo to Blood Red, White, and Blue is a little bit metal. It's kind of Todd does bring a big metal influence on guitar, and it's
Yeah.
very evident. Joe's bass is great on this album.
Yeah,
Like
his
the
bass
Angel,
tone is fantastic on this
his
record.
bass is absolutely fantastic. Brandon's playing is on drums absolutely incredible. I try to play songs like Black Mass and Gasoline. I can't get that snare to ride pattern in the pre-chord. I can't do that. It is
Yeah,
just so fast and so clean.
I think when people think of Rise Against, they don't normally give Brandon the credit that he very obviously deserves. People will just kind of write him off as a
Another
very,
punk drummer.
yeah, people will just, I feel like the thing with Brandon, people will write him off as just being like a solid rhythm section player for, as a percussionist in Rise Against, and they don't really, see, his talent for what it is. And honestly, I think it shows on this record almost more than any other record from them.
I think that this is one of his peak performances.
By far, yeah. Yeah, there. In addition to there not being one bad song on this record, that's another thing. It's
Yeah,
just every
it's
song
flawless front to
slams.
back.
Like, yeah, front to back, pick any song on this thing, they're all good.
It's just, are they better and do they compare it to other songs in their discography?
Well, I think for a lot of Rise Against fans, well, at least I know there's a very obvious like breaking point between some Rise Against fans and others. There are some that will tell you they only like the first 3 or 4 albums, and there's others that will tell you they like both that and the newer stuff. And then there's
Yeah, I
people
know a
who
lot of
will
people
tell
that
you that they
stopped
actually like
listening
the newer
after.
stuff as opposed to the older stuff.
Yeah, I know a lot of people that stopped listening after Suffering the Witness.
Yeah,
There's the
exactly.
what-ohs and more pop punk direction.
Exactly. Yeah, because yeah, I mean, even though we're not at that point yet, um, I think you notice it. You start to notice it in the next album that we'll be talking about, where they like started changing their sound, and you can hear that. And
Yeah.
then they only established that in later albums past that point, and they capitalize on that. But yeah, this record and the Unraveling, I think, are their most punk and hardcore records that they've written. Um,
I think this is the last album where you can truly say this is straight up melodic hardcore.
yeah,
The first two albums are straight up melodic hardcore, and I know a lot of hardcore fans say the same thing. Where after that, it becomes just more hard rock. There's hard rock. There's just straight punk rock, but it's not labeled as hardcore. Where do you rank? Where do you put this?
so yeah, like I said, revolutions per minute, or RPM 10, as abbreviated. Um, I think, like I said, this was such a major step up from the Unraveling in every way. So I'd actually put this in gold.
I put this in silver.
All right, what's your case for silver?
They have albums that will go in gold that just aren't. This album just doesn't compare to other albums.
Yeah, I think actually, if you're talking about like this album on its own, like on its own merits, then by that point I would say gold. But if we're like,
I need to include, like, is this better than other albums in their discography?
yeah, I think, yeah, it's a good idea that we bring that up, because I think this album on its own is a gold record, but I think when you compare it to other albums that came later, I think I would put it in silver.
I think this album is silver. So it's in silver.
Yes, so then we jump to Siren Song of the Counterculture, literally about a year later.
Literally a year later. This is their major label debut. And this was a point where they really had to prove themselves that they are competent songwriters. And it shows. This is
Like,
their first album with a guitarist, Chris Chassis or Chass. I don't know how to pronounce it. He was on Siren Song of the Counterculture and also Suffering the Witness. And I think he's their best guitar player that they've ever had.
yeah, I think, honestly, do you remember the first time you ever heard this record?
Yes.
I do too. I remember exactly where I was. Um, yeah, I was at home. I was just doing nothing all day, and I remember I had to have been 15 when I
I
heard.
was 11, maybe.
Yeah, I had to have been 14, 15 years old when I heard this record for the first time, all the way through. And my God, is it a fucking masterpiece.
The first album I heard in full by them was Appeal to Reason.
Yeah,
But this was probably third. And
it
this,
just, yeah, I think with this record, yeah, the Unraveling was, what it was. Revolutions per minute was just a step up from that. I think this is a step up from Revolutions per minute.
I think it's a massive step up from Revolutions per minute.
Yeah, this is a massive step up from Revolutions per minute. I think this is honestly probably the most important album that they have in their
I
discography.
think this is their most important album
Because
also.
when this came out, it was um it was when George W. Bush just got elected, and I think there are some songs on
No,
here.
he's been president since 2000. He was
Oh,
from 2000 to 2008.
oh wait, yeah, that's right.
This was when the war in Iraq. That's when this happened.
Yeah, it was also, this was when he was doing his second term, I
Yes.
believe. Also, so yeah, there
This
are
was
some
the whole Rock
here.
Against Bush movement.
Yeah, there are some tracks on here that highlight certain things that happened in the Bush administration and the war. Um, Lyrically on this record, and I think you can hear it on
State
songs
of the
like,
Union.
yeah, State of the Union,
Literally.
obviously. I think you can hear it in songs like Tip the Scales. I think you can hear it in songs like, let me bring up the track listing here.
Yeah, one thing that stands out for this album is the lyrics. This is the album where Tim went from a good lyricist to an incredible lyricist. there's something in this 1 year gap that made him go from like a good to a legend in lyricism. I don't
Oh yeah.
know what happened to him, but his diversity, the diversity is insane on this album. It will go from State of the Union, which is massive politics, to Blood to Bleed, which is about heartbreak. It's such a wide variety.
Yeah, there's in this. I
To
think this
swing
was
life
the moment.
away.
I think this was the moment where, like I said, how I keep saying that this is probably their most important album. I say that for a couple different reasons. I say that because not only was this their first major, record day album, um, you had songs like Give It All and Swing Life Away, easily the two most well-known songs on this record, that were just playing fucking everywhere. Like, I remember there are friends that I have that are older than me who remember exactly when this album came out, because I was 7 years old when this album came out. There are friends that I know in my life that are older than me who I've talked to about Rise Against early on like this, and they remember exactly when this record came out. Those two songs were everywhere. It was undeniable that Rise Against was a big deal at this point. And they went from being a band, just a band, to a band worth following with this record. And I think it really showed because a lot of people, I think, when you really pay attention to the lyrics, they kind of wrote them off as just another political band. But no,
Like
because you listen to
Pitchfork
this
did.
record, there's so much diversity in this album. They prove that they were more than just your typical kind of political hardcore punk band, because they've got a lot of songs on here that are very much so more emotionally appealing, and like it has a very personal feel to them.
I completely agree. This is my favorite Rise Against album and my second favorite album ever after Green Day American Idiot. So this album has a very, very special place in my heart. I think we'll go to guitar work because this guitar work is a much even step up from revolutions per minute. I'm going to go to example Paper Wings and Tip the Scales.
Yeah, Tip the Scales for me personally is my favorite song on here, and I know for a long time there were songs on here that would keep jumping around as my favorite on the record. Tip the Scales at this point in my life, as me being a guitar player myself and what I'm influenced by this band, that is like one of my favorite songs they have ever done, period. And it's just everything about it, everything from the darker kind of melodic guitar chords and chord progressions that they're using, along with that solo, um, and just the overall vibe I get from this song. Like you could tell that they were really trying to be serious.
Yeah, because they had something to prove.
Yeah, and it's just that intro, how it starts off with that one simple kind of riff, and then it kind of breaks into the whole, strumming, and like that point, that was a turning point for me in the record, because like every song was good up until that point. Was like there were great songs up till that point, because it's fairly early on the record.
Yeah,
um
I think the
that
second
song
half is
just
better.
blew my mind.
I prefer the second half over the first half.
Yeah, I mean, if you're not a Rise Against fan up till this point, or don't really know much about them, I think for any new fan, for any new listener, I think this is one of the best,
One of the
chances you're
best.
gonna have listening to this band. Pick this record up wherever you find it, get it on vinyl, bring it up on
Spotify,
Spotify,
Apple Music,
Apple Music,
whatever.
anywhere. This album is everywhere. Well, all of these records are everywhere. Yeah, so this is just a solid album all around. You can listen to this thing front to back, and every song is fantastic. For me, the first drop, like in the first couple tracks of this record, when I heard it in for the first few times, I thought it was the most forgettable song here. But honestly,
Yeah.
listening to it like even now, I think it's a better song than what I initially gave it credit for. But yeah, I do think it is still probably the most forgettable here. But other than that, that's not a detractor for me at all as to just how great this record really is. It's one song in a bunch of like fantastic songs.
And I feel like the first drop was a good um, uh, decline in intensity.
It's
And
yeah,
then,
it's very cleverly placed in this record.
yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. uh, I'm going to go to Joe's. Joe ups his Blood to Bleed, and I think is one of the best bass performances he's ever had, which is Rumors of My Demise have been greatly exaggerated. I think that's possibly his best bass performance ever
Oh yeah.
with the chorus.
Yeah, I think you're right on those. I think also I got to give it to Tim on this record because also like on songs like Rumors of My Demise, that chorus hits you in the face so hard. It's one of his best vocal performances I think he's had.
And then Brandon just destroys again. His
Brandon
best
just does what Brandon
performance
does on this record.
anywhere but here is possibly his best performance ever. It's just so fast and so clean. I have no idea how he did it.
Yeah, Brandon, like I think the whole band on here just in their own ways, like each of them, I don't think there is one weak moment from any band member here on this whole thing.
I think everybody's at the absolute top of their game, trying as hard as they can, and it absolutely delivers.
Oh yeah. Like there's a reason why like when you talk to any Rise Against fan, um like not even the hardcore ones, like any casual fan of Rise
Yeah,
Against
casual.
who's familiar with them will say that Siren Song of the Counterculture is just on another level.
I think it's their first masterpiece.
Yeah, I think so too. Yeah, when talking about the Unraveling revolutions per minute, yeah, I think this is the first masterpiece of a couple that they've had.
Yeah. And I think that the mix is amazing. How everything sits together. Like the Unraveling and Revolutions per Minute were a little bit rough around the edges. You know, they're hardcore, they're on Fat Records, they don't have like the highest production budget. But this is on Geffen, and this is where they have everything that they need to record with, and it's just phenomenal. And every single instrument, it's punchy, it hits hard, and it just works. Every instrument, you can hear it, you can hear the bass the entire time throughout this entire album, and it just works perfectly. So where would you put this?
Yeah, um, yeah. For me, it is to me probably their most important album. It's their first masterpiece they've had, and it was an extremely like lyrically important album also. So just in every way, I have to put this in Diamond.
This is absolutely diamond for me. Absolutely diamond. There's nowhere else to put it.
Yeah, in Diamond, just for us to explain that Diamond is for those albums that are like Gold is for like albums that we believe are through
Are
and through hands
perfect.
down great albums. Diamond is for those records in a band's
That are exceptional.
that are among their most important.
Yeah, so next, Suffer in the Witness. Their second album on Geffen, their second major label. I feel like they still were trying to top themselves, prove themselves even more. They were getting more successful commercially with the videos like Swing Life Away and Give It All getting airplay. And this is where they actually got real success. Like
Yeah.
they went on co-headlining tours with Billy Talent. They actually started playing very large venues. And this is the album that caused that big escalation. I think this album is absolutely 100% different from Siren Song. It is
Yeah.
a complete 180.
It's a completely different change for them, but I think in the best way.
It's in the
I
best
think
way.
yeah. Because Siren Song of the Counterculture, as like it's a perfect album. It's a diamond record, hands down. I think this it was a change for them, but yeah, in the best way, because it just feels different overall, because like it's not nearly as heavy. There are still screams on this record. I don't think anywhere near as much as
Ready
many.
to Fall comes immediately to mind with
Yeah, yeah.
screams.
Ready to Fall is probably, in my opinion, Tim's like true like screaming performance on this record. I don't think there's not many other songs on here, if at all, that he has as much screaming as that song, even though it's still brief in that song.
Yeah. And it's top tier screaming.
Yeah. It's I think it's perfectly placed within the song structure. Um I don't know how he does that, or how like what inspired him to put that there, but it just makes it flow so well, and it slams so hard before the chorus, because that hits you, and then the chorus comes out of nowhere after that, and it's such a good chorus melody. It's structured really well. I keep saying that word a lot, but it really is that song, like front to back. There's just not one flaw in the whole thing, and I think it's a great choice to have that early on in the record. Um, After having an opening track like Chamber in the Cartridge, which is just a phenomenal intro track to any Rise Against album I've ever heard. I
It
don't think you can
where
go
it
wrong.
goes, this is noise, and the beginning snare roll. I think that's possibly their best intro song.
Yeah,
And then it goes straight into Injection, which absolutely hits you in the face.
that song by this point, it's just iconic. Rise Against. You can choose, like there's multiple songs on here that are iconic Rise Against. Like when you think Rise
Prayer of the
Against,
Refugee.
yeah, when you think Rise Against, you think Prayer of the Refugee. You'll think that insane guitar lead from Under the Knife. Yeah,
Survive.
yeah, Survive. So many fantastic songs on here. You've got, and I think we didn't even mention this yet. In this album, I think lyrically speaking, when you get to songs like The Approaching Curve, even though it's not next to like place in the album, it's not next to Roadside. I think when you're seeing lyrically in this record, and you see what kind of is happening in The Approaching Curve and how that was written lyrically, and then you listen to a song like Roadside and you listen to how the lyrics are written there, I think the both of them play off of each other actually pretty cleverly,
Yeah.
because in The Approaching Curve, you've got two people that are, you know, like in a relationship and it's not going well, and they're arguing in the middle of in their car, and they're on a road trip, and then when the chorus hits, like there's tension built up in the verses, and then in the chorus, I think it doesn't straight out say that, they crash, but I think it's very heavily implied
Yeah.
that they're like falling off a cliff or something, and it works as a metaphor actually in where the relationship is going, because we can see it's going downhill, we hear what's happening, and I think it's just, if you were to take like a story and just put it into music form for that kind of situation, I think it couldn't be more perfect than that.
I think this is their best lyrical performance ever, this album. I think this is their best lyrical performance with some of my favorite lines. How we survive is what makes us who we are. What's mine is always yours is always mine. I think this is objectively their best album.
Yeah, I mean, I would say, even though I have my personal favorite in their discography,
I think
that's,
this is their best album.
yeah, I'd say, yeah, for me personally, even though I have my own favorite, my own complete bias, this, I think, just across the board, lyrically, musically, when people think Rise Against, they think either Suffer or The Witness or Siren Song of the Counterculture. It's one of those two that most people will say are their best records.
Yeah, I think this is Diamond.
I
It's
do
a
think
crime
that.
against humanity to put anywhere else.
Yeah, I mean, you've got songs like "The Good Left Undone" that just lyrically, it's an incredible song
I
because
saw that live.
yeah, I wish they'd play this live when I saw them, the one time that I was able to. It just lyrically, when you listen to that song and you actually read the lyrics, to me, it feels like Tim, or the main character in this song, not necessarily Tim, but it's it's talking about how, like, the main character in the song just hates everything, going on in the world, and he's like guilt tripping himself, kind of. And I feel like he's not brave enough to, admit that, okay, he's clearly doing something wrong. um and I think when the chorus hits, and like those more emotional kind of, um that more emotional kind of vocal performance from Tim, I think you could go as far to say as that, it's almost him speaking to God in the song, if you really think about it, and like you really sit down with
Their
the
songs
lyrics.
have such deep lyrical
They really,
interpretation,
really do.
but
And
I
like
feel
it's
like
something is so simple as, like, pulling a flower from the ground. Like, you wouldn't think twice about that normally, but it just, the way that part of the song is written, it's just so eloquently lyrically written, and it actually makes you feel guilty in a way, at least for me, listening to that, and hearing like this whole other, perspective from Tim you know about just doing something like that.
yeah. I think that we must talk about Prayer of the Refugee.
Yeah, "Prayer of the Refugee" was easily the biggest song on this record, the most well-known song on this record. um I think for Rise Against, it's easily, I think, when you listen to this whole record and you can see kind of what each song is doing. I think as far as how this song is structured and just the overall sound of it, I think it's pretty easy to say that this would be the lead single
Yeah.
for this album. I think it's the most commercial, but I think in the best way, because when we say commercial for Rise Against terms, like, we're not saying that it's bad. This is not a bad song at all. Like,
Oh, they closed with this the second time I saw them, and it was everybody went ape shit. It was
yeah, Prayer of the Refugee is one of those songs that you hear it live, you see what it does to the crowd, and you can't help but just feel like pumped up when you hear this song. It's such an energy rush.
when you hear the intro with the guitar, you immediately
You know what's
go,
coming.
okay. And then live with the chorus, everybody screams so hard.
Yeah, Tim, he's such a great frontman. It's almost ridiculous how good of a frontman he really is.
I think that we need to close up this album and go to Appeal to Reason
Yeah, so
because we can go all day.
yeah, like we said, for
Each album I
our
can talk
viewers
about
that
all
are
day.
yeah, for our viewers that are watching right now, as we said, I mean, we both love this band. There's really nothing bad we can say about this, about Rise Against. It's Suffer from the Wind. This is a diamond record. Um,
Nothing else
and there's
possible.
just nothing else, at least in my opinion, that would change that. It's really hard to talk negatively about it.
The production is insane. I think Tim's vocal performance from Siren song to Suffer is massive step up.
Yeah,
I think that his voice, this is more his iconic voice. You can
yeah,
hear this is like his trademark voice. Siren song was a lot more raspy, and the first two albums were more rough around the edges, but this is more like you hear a voice and you're like, oh, that's Tim McGrath from Rise Against.
yeah. Like, yeah, you immediately know that it's him.
But like the Siren song, it's a lot more raspy, and that's like a very distinct thing about that album. But this is the first like vocal performance, you're like, yeah, that's iconic, Tim. Let's go to Appeal to Reason.
Yeah, man. So this was just 2008.
And they must have felt insane pressure coming off Suffering the Witness.
Yeah, it's like, how do you follow up a record like that?
What do I think? Did they top it? No.
Yeah, no, I don't believe that they topped Suffer from the Witness either. Although, when looking at Appeal to Reason, like, I think even more than Siren Song and Suffer, I think not in terms of, not in terms of just overall reputation. I think this is the album that got popular. I think it's one of
It's
their
very
most well-known.
accessible.
Yeah, I think it's an easily accessible record for them. For people who didn't know Rise Against, there are a couple songs on here where they're some of the first songs they've ever heard.
Savior.
Yeah,
Re-education
Savior
through labor.
obviously, without question, is by this point, um, like their biggest song that they've ever written. And I think it's actually ironic that it's their biggest song because if you think about it, um, I remember when they wrote this record, Savior wasn't really a song they were at
Tim
all
did not
excited
like
about.
this song.
No one in Rise Against like remotely even cared for this song at all. And I mean, but it actually took someone from the record label, I forget who exactly it was, to tell them to keep it on the record because initially they wanted to make it a B-side and told them, no, this is a great song. You guys are crazy if you don't keep it on the record. And then little did they know, after they did the initial tour for this record, um, after they were home, after the tour was done for Appeal to Reason, Savior the song, after they did the music video for it, it started blowing up when they were home after the tour. And then that's when they realized, okay, this song is a big deal. People love this song. It's getting a lot of radio play. We're going to have to learn the damn thing, because people are going to want to hear this live. And it took that realization for them to realize that this song is a lot better than they gave it credit for. Even though I think musically this is a great song on the record, I don't think it's um
Best. I
I
think
don't
it's
think it's
middle of
the
the road.
best
I
on the
think
record.
it's like in the middle for
Yeah,
this
it's
album. There's
somewhere in the
much better
middle.
songs. There's much worse songs.
Yeah, there's better songs than this on the album. There's worse songs than this on the album. I think I think like you can tell that they didn't really care about this song at all because it's just buried in the track list there.
Yeah.
Like you see after Hero of War, it's just right after that. Um,
I feel like the last three songs are where they're like, Savior, Hairline Fracture, Whereabouts Unknown. They're just like, yeah, we'll just throw those there for time.
yeah, they just buried this in the freaking track list, and like it's. I mean, I can see where they were coming from. Actually, that I think as far as from a musician standpoint, and what I think that they were thinking about when they had this song done is that like the chorus hits and it's not really like it's kind of middle of the road Rise Against, when that chorus hits. Yeah, I think when they put this on the record after being told that it's, a great song that they need to, I think the reason why this song never came up in conversation for them is because they didn't really think that it was the peak of what they could do. I don't think, as far as coming off of a record like Suffer and the Witness, they didn't think that this song necessarily was a step up from what they were doing before. And so they didn't, for that reason, they didn't initially want to keep it on the record. But they did. And I think it's ironic, as I was saying earlier, that this song is their most well-known song by this point, easily, like even more than Prayer of the Refugee,
Oh,
because
for sure.
Rise Against, they're seen as this very political band, and when you have a song like Savior as your most well-known song, it's very counterintuitive, and I think it actually works out in their favor because um, people are like, oh well, they're a political band, but when you hear Savior, you realize, again, like we were talking about from Siren Song, they're more than just any political band. They have songs that are more, you know, emotionally leaning, especially like in the bridge of um of Savior, when everything dies down and there's that complete tempo change.
I don't hate you.
It goes from, you know, probably the most well-known moment in Rise Against discography, when it goes from that very high energy, you know, in your face kind of impact of a rock song, and then it completely changes tempo and goes to that very clean tone guitar. um that riff, along with just the, you know, I don't hate you, I don't hate you, it's, I think yeah, I think it's Rise Against the most well-known moment. I think
We
any
forgot to mention this is the first album with Zach Blair.
Yeah, Zach Blair, the first time that he really contributed massively, and Tim has said this before, is those slight lead sections, those slight lead riffs, as simplistic as they are in the bridge of that song, when it's slowly coming back up into the rest of the song, um, after the bridge. The leads he's got in that bridge is the first time he really contributed to the band. And I think it shows because, like, throughout this whole album, and not only that song, he just, like, on songs like Re-Education Through Labor, he proves that he's just an unreal lead guitarist in this band, even though he did not, like, if you think back to it, when Zach Blair just got into this band, he did not have an easy time getting into Rise Against at all. He originally couldn't even play the solo to Like the Angel.
Yeah, he was in Guar.
He was in Guar, and yeah, and he had a hard time getting into Rise Against, but he busted his ass off and he got in. And I think he really proved himself on this album.
I think that this album has filler,
Yeah,
but filler in a good way.
yeah, like
Like, I'm gonna go The Strength to Go On, Hairline Fracture, Kotov Syndrome, The Dirt Whispered. There are a lot of filler songs, and they're good filler, but I feel like some are kind of unnecessary in the out, like Kotov Syndrome,
yeah,
especially. The Strength to Go On, those are my two least favorite songs on this album.
yeah. I'd say
But
those are
yeah,
yeah, I'd say those are probably my two least favorite also. But some of the other filler songs that they have, and I think those are two. I think both of those are good songs for what they are.
yeah,
Because I like, to this point, like, I still don't think they have a single, you know, like, just flat out terrible
bad
song.
song.
I don't think Rise Against has ever flat out written just a god awful song. Like, even those that are unforgettable in the Unraveling, you know, like, those are all like good for what they are, even if they don't stand out. And I think, yeah, it's the same case here on Appeal to Reason, where you have filler, and you have some, you know, filler that just is what it is. They're good for what they are. There's other filler on this album, like Heads Unworthy. That's a great song. I think they have
Oh,
great.
I think that's my favorite song on the album.
Yeah, I think they have great filler on this album. Heads Unworthy is, like, it's just a fantastic song all around. Um, so yeah, they have the filler that they do have in the times that it's not, like, what's the word for it? The times that the filler that they have isn't notable, it's still good. And then more times than not, though, like, their filler, in my opinion, is just, it's great. You know, there's not really much I can say that takes away from the album when talking about the filler songs. I think um I think lyrically, there are at least four political songs on here when you're talking about songs like Hero of War, especially
Yeah, I wanted to
talking
get into
about,
that.
yeah, when you're talking about Hero of War, Re-Education Through Labor, when you're talking about From Heads
Collapse,
Unworthy,
Collapse
yeah,
Post America,
yeah, and Post America, Collapse,
Entertainment.
yeah. Like, songs like that, those are all, like, politically lyrical songs. And then the other songs on here are, like, more emotionally charged. They're more personal feeling. Yeah,
Like
like
Savior.
Savior. It was interesting because when Tim wrote Savior, he didn't actually experience what the lyrics in that song are about personally. He straight up made that, like, kind of breakup story, love story, whatever you want to call it, straight from his mind. He didn't experience that personally.
One thing I want to talk about Entertainment, because that is one of the most unique songs in their discography. Where we all Entertainment, where it goes to like that almost like circus feel, doon it, doon it, doon, where I feel, you know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I
I
think
I
yeah,
think
I
that's
wanted to
such a
talk about this
unique
song also because
feeling
it
and
is a
sounding
very
song.
different song for Rise Against. It's a very unique song for Rise Against. Um, I think that in terms of just melody from Tim, it's a very circusy kind of vibe. I mean, obviously, hence the song title. I think it's ironic for them that they wrote this song actually because a song like Entertainment, Tim and like most of the band has said, and they're known for like being animal rights activists. And when you have a song like Entertainment that has more of a circusy kind of vibe and feel to it, I think it's somewhat counterintuitive to that, hypocritical, just the way that the melody is. But when you look at the lyrics, I think it's a genius song because the lyrics are actually political and it
Yeah.
goes towards that whole political aspect that they were going for on the other four political songs that we mentioned on here. So I think in that case, just what they stand for and when they have a song like this, I think using that kind of vocal melody to talk about like the political things that they do talk about this song in the song, I think is geniusly written.
And Audience of One is another song. That song, it's not a ballad, but it kind of is. That's
Yeah,
a
I
weird
would
song.
say, I mean,
Hero of War on that album.
other than Hero of War, obviously, and like in some points, Savior. Yeah, this is like easily a ballad song in my opinion, and yeah, I mean, lyrically speaking, it's not a political song. I think it's more of just a telling of growing up, and everyone who you knew in your life who grew up with you, it's just
All our friends
moving
are
on with
gone.
their lives. But I think lyrically, like to express that, it just like we keep saying, the lyrics in this band are incredible. It's very lyrically descriptive. It's to what you would feel like in that kind of situation.
So, where would you rank this?
So for this album, I think it is their most popular record. I think for some of the
Yeah,
songs like Hero of War, Savior, Re-Education Through Labor, I think are the most well-known songs on this record.
yeah.
With this album as a whole, I think there are great songs on here, even if there are a couple of them that kind of take away from the album. Um, Personally, I would put this in silver.
When I first,
Arguably, I could make this bronze, but I think
bronze.
I mean, I could just I could be leaning
I
towards
think
that.
this is on the silver and gold. Like, it could be either silver or gold, but we'll put in silver
Yeah, I'm
and
like
get hate
yeah, I
for
was
it.
gonna say I'm pretty confident this is a silver album.
I think it's silver.
Yeah, because yeah, like we said, there are some very notable tracks on here, some very important songs on here, but the filler on here that isn't peak filler Rise Against, it kind of takes away from the album a little bit, even if individually there's not necessarily one bad song on this album.
There's not one bad song because they don't have any bad songs, but there are ones that's just eh.
Yeah.
So I think silver is a good spot. I made a list of listening before. I put this in silver, and then now I put it silver/gold. The filler songs are better than I remember, but they're filler songs. And by filler songs, I mean songs like Long Forgotten Sons is not, I would say, The Dirt Whispered, Kotov Syndrome, From Heads Unworthy, even though that's my favorite, The Strength to Go On, Hairline Fracture, and Whereabouts Unknown. Those are the songs that I think are filler. Collapse Post America, Re-Education Through Labor, Audience of One, Entertainment, Hero of War, and Savior are the standout songs on that album. but the rest they're good. I don't really think I can put this in gold because it's not a 10 out of 10 album.
Yeah, it's
Is it?
not, but it is good for what it is.
It's
I
good for
think,
what it is. It's
um,
good for their first very commercial album.
yeah, I think, yeah, it's a very good way to put it. It is a very commercial album. And I can see why people from, the era of saying, I mean, those fans that, like the era from, the Unraveling through Suffer and the Witness, I can see why they said that they stopped listening
This
when
is the
Appeal to Reason
Whoa
came out.
album where it becomes a lot more pop punk.
Yeah, and it's like they were still underrated through Suffer, and the Witness. And then they just became this huge deal when, Savior and Hero of War and Re-Education Through Labor and, those songs came out and they became, your typical kind of, radio band, even though like their kind of, radio rock was still a lot better than some other bands that were doing it.
Oh, absolutely. Like, what would you radio rock bands? Like, what would you say?
Like I would say like a Billy Talent or like I mean they were like a radio rock band from their first album, Billy Talent.
We're massive Billy Talent fans. We're
Yeah.
not putting any shade on them.
No,
Like
yeah, no
Red
shade on Billy
Flag
Talent at all.
is
Like
like comparable to this.
when talking about like mainstream fantastic punk rock, you can't talk about it without mentioning Billy Talent.
And AFI is another band I feel
Yeah,
like would be
AFI,
in that.
Alkaline Trio, countless
Alkaline
other bands.
Trio,
Yeah.
Thrice.
I think yeah, I can see why, fans from uh the era that they liked Suffer and the Witness and everything before that can say that they stopped listening with Appeal to Reason. Um
I understand.
I understand it, even though personally, this is my favorite band of all time, as I said. So I like every record they've done.
You don't have to like every album from your favorite
Yeah,
band.
you don't have to like every album.
Green
Like
Day,
I
I
don't
don't
love
like all their albums.
yeah, like I said, like I don't love the Unraveling, but I can still appreciate it for what it is.
Like some of my other favorite bands, The Offspring, I'll say The Used, Thought for My Valentine. I don't like some albums from them, and that's okay. So I think that we should just go to Endgame.
Yeah, and man, yeah, I remember the first time I ever heard Endgame when
So
it
do
came
I.
out. I mean, I didn't hear it until 2011.
2012
Um,
for me.
but this album, when it came out, when I heard it in 2011, when my cousin showed me this band for the first time, this was my introduction to Rise Against, where a lot of other people were introduced with songs off of Appeal to Reason or Suffer in the Witness, or even like Revolutions Per Minute. Um, this was the album that I first heard from them. My first song I ever heard from Rise Against was Gentleman's Coup, and then Midnight Hands.
Such an
Um,
underrated song, Gentleman's Coup.
yeah, were the first songs I ever listened to, I ever heard from Rise Against. And it was at a time in my life when I desperately needed it because I was 14 when I heard those songs for the first time. And, when I heard that record for the first time in full. And it's just, to this day, it is my favorite album, not just from Rise Against, but of all time. Because every song on this, going from Architects, the first song on this thing, to Endgame, the song, as the last song on this thing, to me, there's not one moment in this entire record when I want to shut it off. There's not a single
Yeah.
moment when I want to skip a song. It's just
Yeah,
every
there's nothing
note.
skippable.
It's an unbelievable record. Every single note of this album, it completely sucks me in. It's just, songs like Satellite, you get to the bridge of
That
that.
was the first song. Well, I knew them from Guitar Hero, from 2007, Guitar Hero 3, Prayer of the Refugee. And then I knew Re-Education Through Labor. I knew Savior. But when I heard Satellite, that's when I actually started listening to their albums. And
Yeah,
that's when I heard Appeal to Reason, then Suffer, then Siren Song. Then I heard this album in full, and I'm like, holy shit, this is insane.
yeah,
I heard
it's
the first notes to Architects. I'm like, oh, this is gonna hit hard. But one thing about this album, this might be controversial, but I feel like Survivor Guilt should be the first song on the album and swap with Architects.
I
I think
actually agree with you.
I think Survivor Guilt would fit better as an opener than Architects, and I feel like it would be absolutely perfect if Architects would be in the spot of Survivor Guilt, In Between Midnight Hands, and Broken Mirrors.
I completely agree with you. I think Survivor's Guilt,
The opening would work so well.
if that was the intro track to this record, it would just
It would hit harder. I think it would hit harder.
Survivor's Guilt is like honestly probably my third favorite song they've ever written, behind Make It Stop and Tip the Scales. It's way up there for me. It's just everything about Survivor's Guild, everything about the lyrics to the commentary throughout the song between this Russian kind of guy, this foreign kind of speaking, person, sounds like he's Russian. He's talking to this American, sounding guy, and they're just talking about the state of America, itself. And okay, why have these other countries fallen, and America is just standing and it hasn't fallen yet. And the Russian guy is kind of playing with the Americans' kind of psyche and like questioning if he really thinks that America is going to last,
going to be destroyed.
It is going to be destroyed, or if it's going to last. And then it's just very it's a lot of tension. Yeah, it really would have. That's the only thing I would change about this record, the placements of Architects. And
I can't believe that you thought of that too.
Yeah,
that's something I'm like, that would have been perfect.
It would have, dude, because like you listen to Survivor's Guilt, you hear that opening riff and how it's like all subtle and whatnot, and melodic. It's
I think Zach wrote that part.
Yeah, this is why, that's why I keep saying that Zach is my favorite guitar player from this band, because different, just stuff he does like that, man. It's like subtle stuff like that. It's just, that's so basic, but it adds so much to the song. When you have a song like that, that's like going from that kind of subtle kind of riff into the commentary from what they're saying, and then it hits you in the face with the rest of the song. It's just, it works so well for it. And I mean, I love Zach for that reason.
I think Chris is their best guitar player.
A lot of the songs on this album, it's just, I mean, that song's like, it's a very important song to the state of what America was going through. And I think it's one of their most timeless tracks. I think it holds a lot more meaning even now. Yeah.
A lot of their stuff hits harder now than ever.
Yeah. Everything that happened in 2020,
2021
even by this point. Yeah, it's just
10 years. This album's 10 years old.
This album is 10 years old, and I think that song specifically, I think, is the most relevant. Yeah, I think that song's the most relevant because it means so much now than even when it did then. And yeah, there's still plenty of other songs on this record that are, that we could talk about for hours.
I think that there are some songs that are like main single songs, and then there is filler, but the filler is different from Appeal to Reason because the filler needs to be there. Like, they're not important songs to the album, like Disparity by Design, A Gentleman's Coup, arguably, This Is Letting Go. Those are they're less important songs. People like forget about them. Like, by filler, I mean they're more forgettable, but they're amazing songs that need to be there. Like, I think the main Architects, Help Is on the Way, Make It Stop, Satellite, Midnight Hand, Survivor Guilt, Broken Mirrors, Wait for Me. I think those are the big songs on that album that hit the hardest.
Wait for Me is just an incredible song. It's, it's just, lyrically speaking, with again that guitar riff, man, in the beginning of that song, like how it always like comes back to that. That's one of my favorite riffs that they played other than Survivor's Guilt in their whole discography. Like, I love the in your face kind of stuff that they'll do, but I love that kind of subtle stuff that they'll do here and there. And yeah, Make It Stop, that is my favorite song of all time, because I remember the first time I heard that, I thought it was a great song, like when I was 14, 15 years old. But yeah, I mean, as I've told you, like a little while ago, like
personal reasons.
4 years ago by this point, when there was something like personally that, happened to me in my friend group. The next time I heard that song after that, I couldn't make it through all the way. It took me a long time to be able to listen to that song again. And like ever since that like personal moment that happened, it became my favorite song of all time.
That was the first song that they put in the encore both times when I saw them.
Yeah, like whenever I hear that now, I can't
The
help but tear
crowd
up.
chants.
Yeah, whenever I hear that song now, I can't help but tear up, especially when it gets to
The part
the
where he calls the names
yeah, when he calls the names of the
and the
kids who
age.
died and the ages of them, and it just yeah, it hits home. It hits you harder than you think it's going to.
Where would you put this album?
For me, like I think this is honestly
Apart from your feelings, where do you think this would go?
apart from my own personal feelings,
I think this is a gold album.
yeah, putting my feelings aside for what this did for Rise Against, I don't think it's their most important album,
It's not.
even though I think Make It Stop personally is probably their most important song. I know it's going on a little bit of a stretch saying that. I personally feel Make It Stop is their most important song, even if I don't feel like this album is their most important album as a whole.
I think it's a solid gold. It's a 10 out of 10, but
Yeah.
it's not over a 10 out of 10.
I mean, yeah, I mean, personally, like, I would say this is a 10 out of 10, but what it did for Rise Against, it wasn't an album that like every single, fan of Rise Against still by this point was like right on board with right away. And it
I
wasn't
know a lot of people that are just like, Endgame, yeah, it's okay. It has a couple good songs, but the rest, it's
yeah,
just,
there are a lot of fans, that don't like that didn't really see the true beauty of what this record really is.
yeah,
So I think it's not their most important album, but I do think it's a great album,
yeah.
through and through. And it's my favorite album of all time.
It's better.
I
I
would put
think
it
it's
in
better
gold.
than Appeal to Reason.
Yeah, it's much better than Appeal to Reason. I would put this in gold any day.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was just a step up from Appeal to Reason in just every way.
Let's go 2014, The Black Market. This was the first album I remember waiting for when it came out. I anticipated this release. This was the first album that happened for me. Was it for you too?
Yeah. Oh yeah. After I heard Endgame all the way through, as my
This was the
introduction.
first one I'm like, oh, I'm excited for The Black Market to come out.
Yeah, after I heard Endgame all the way through, I was like, okay. I mean, other than listening to their back catalog, I'm interested to see what the next album will do for them, and I wanted to hear what the next album would sound like. So yeah, Black Market when it came out, I remember hearing like a couple tracks from this thing. It actually took
Yeah.
me a while to listen to this thing all the way through because I was just lazy on it.
It's
Like
a
I didn't
strange album. It's a
Yeah, I
very
didn't
weird
listen to it.
album.
I didn't listen to it all the way through when it first came out. It kind of like in 2014 when I was a junior, when I was a senior in high school, this album kind of actually passed, under my radar, and I didn't like exactly pick it up right away. Like I didn't know about it right away. Like I remember
I
hearing,
knew about it.
like I remember hearing a couple songs from it, like I don't want to be here anymore.
Tragedy in Time.
Yeah, Tragedy in Time. I remember hearing those songs, and those were the two that and People Live Here, because actually
Yeah.
my cousin, in my senior year of high school, she actually performed that song with a friend of hers on guitar, and she was singing it, and so that's how I knew that song also. So those were the three that I knew really well, and then it took me a little while to really listen to the whole thing front to back.
It's a
Um,
strange album.
it is a strange record. I think it's a strange record for the placement of some of these tracks. Not to say that there's a bad song on this record. I don't
There's
believe
not
that
a
there's
bad
a bad
song.
song on this album.
They're different songs.
Yeah, it feels very different. I think like we said before, the concept of Rise Against filler comes up in this album also.
Yes.
I think the most like incredible songs to me, and like the reason why I say this is one of their most underrated records.
It's a very underrated album.
Yeah, like when I say that, like I'm talking about songs like Zero Visibility for sure.
Yes.
when they have like
Yes.
7 different guitar change-ups in that song. It's
That was my
ridiculous.
favorite song when this album came out. It's still top 3 of this album for me.
Zero Visibility still blows my mind.
Like a
That song,
like a metal breakdown almost in it. It's
yeah,
a heavy song.
yeah, like Zero Visibility, Methadone, Tragedy
Yeah.
in Time, People Live Here, the song, and what's the other one I'm thinking? Let me bring up the track listing.
Yeah, I'm bringing up the track list too. But this album is very strange because uh, Sudden Life is a very weird song that doesn't really play to their style. The Black Market is a kind of a weird one. Methadone is a little bit weird. Awake Too Long. Awake Too Long is easily my least favorite song on this album.
Oh yeah, I see it now. So yeah, I mean my favorite songs on here were Zero Visibility, Methadone, Tragedy in Time, People Live Here, and The Eco Terrorist in Me.
Eco Terrorist to me is quite forgettable.
I
That and A
would say
Beautiful Indifference I mix up a lot. I don't know
I
why.
just think Eco Terrorist in Me is like one of my favorites from this because the lyrics, for sure, and I really like just his screams in this song. I think
Yeah,
the lyrics tell a story
very good
in this
vocal
song.
performance on this album.
Yeah. But yeah, Sudden Life I think is underrated even though like, it's not really an important song, but I
It's a
think
weird song.
it's weird, but I think there's still
It's
something about it that
experimental.
keeps me coming back to it.
I remember I saw an interview. It was with Joe and Brandon, and they're like, "What are your favorite songs to play live?" Brandon's like, "Oh, Sudden Life is definitely my favorite one now because it's just so different from anything that we've done, and it's such a change up in our set." And it is. It's just very different.
Yeah, and I think that song for sure. I think Beautiful Indifference is a great song. I think the chorus, how it has that more ballady type of feel. I think they took what they had going on from Endgame, and they kind of just continued doing
I
that.
think this album is Endgame Part 2, but more
Yeah,
experimental.
yeah, I would say the same.
That's what I feel about this album.
Yeah, I think this album is like kind of similar to what they were doing from Endgame. But yeah, there's some more stuff that they haven't really done before when they were, them going to different kind of territory, and
Trying
seeing.
more metal, trying more mellow.
Yeah, I think for me, my biggest complaint about this record is that one, it's not consistent.
It's
Um,
not at
because
all.
there are a couple tracks on here with their placements. I'm thinking, what are you doing, Rise Against? Like, I remember hearing this for the first time all the way through, and it did not make any sense to me at all that People Live Here was not the last track on this record. Like, don't get me wrong, Bridges is a good song for what it
Bridges
is.
reminds me of we'll get into that during Wolves. People
Bridges
Live
is
Here
a
would have
good
been an
song
amazing
for what it
closer.
is, but I think in terms of the record, it's just kind of forgettable. And it's very like in my opinion, run of the mill kind of Rise Against. It doesn't really stand out to me that well, and I think it does them a disservice not having it somewhere else in the track listing, or having it actually as a B-side. Like I honestly don't think it's a solid enough song.
I think Escape Artist should have been
Yeah,
on this album
I think
instead.
exactly. I think Bridges should have been replaced for Escape Artist, and even then, I don't think Escape Artist, if it was on this album, instead of Bridges, I don't think even then it should have been the last song on this record because
No,
People Live Here. It just to me, it wraps up the entire record perfectly.
I do like The Great Die Off as the first song.
Yeah, Great
I
Dials works
that
great.
fits. That would have fit kind of
It
like
works really
Survivor
well as
Guilt
the intro
with
track
Endgame.
because you have those violins, and that's not something that they really capitalized, in their discography that well, or enough up till this point. They did do it in Roadside, on Suffer and the Witness
Yeah.
here and there, and they did it on like maybe one or two other tracks. Them having violin in that track, I think that was the first time they did it to that extent, but I think it's also the first time that they pushed that kind of sound for making it the first song on the album. I think they wanted to show people that they could have violin and still have it be beautiful.
I think The Great Die Off is similar in Survivor Guilt if Survivor Girl opened the album, because it would have taken a while to actually like start the song on Suffering the Witness with a intro slash chambered cartridge, it would take a while for the song to build up and then punch you.
Yeah, I think Great Die Off, it's a slower song. It takes a bit to get into.
Yeah.
But when it does, it's a good song.
Yeah. But then there's songs like The Black Market where it's just not the best stuff they've ever. That Awake Too Long and Bridges are probably my least favorites.
Yeah, I
It,
mean, I
it
like
just
the riff
doesn't it
that
doesn't contribute
yeah, I
to the
like the
album.
riff that Zach does in the chorus of The Black Market. That's probably my favorite part of the song. Um but yeah, I agree. This is not like peak Rise Against. I don't think it's the best stuff that they've written, but I do think it's a decent to solid level album overall.
Yeah. I would put in Silver.
Yeah, I would put it in silver also.
Okay. So Black Market gets Silver.
We go from that
Okay.
album
Now
to
we go to Wolves,
Wolves 3 years later.
which was I remember the first time I heard the violence. It was on the bus in high school, and I heard it. I'm like, oh, this is gonna be really good. And then I remember hearing House on Fire. I'm like, fuck, what's this album gonna be? It's gonna be weird.
I think this is lyrically probably, I mean, other than the Unraveling, I think this is
It's a very
lyrically,
political album.
it's a very political album, but I actually don't think it's political enough.
I think it's vague.
Yeah, I think it's vague. I don't think it's political
Besides
enough
How Many
because,
Walls, which was How Many Walls, it's about Trump. It's a vague album.
yeah, I just say
Like
that I don't
the
think,
violence in our nature, he doesn't explain what it is.
yeah, it's a
Like,
very vague album. I don't think that it's political enough. The reason I say that is because, I mean, they did the writing for this album in 2016. And as you know, I'm not trying to get political here.
I'm not political.
I'm not trying to get political, but certain things happened that year that I think, being Rise Against, they usually are very good about. They usually include a lot of political leaning kind of, you know, lyrical content, points of, attraction in their stuff. And I think they didn't do enough to capitalize on what they stood for.
This album was initially going to be called Morning in America instead of Wolves
Yeah.
because Tim thought, oh, it should be called Morning in America because that's what we're feeling right now. But they didn't want to make a depressing album. And I feel that also lays into the lyrical content, how they didn't just want it to be a complete downer. So I remember the Black Market, I remember, but this is the album I remember like super well, every single step of the way.
Yeah. Yeah, like I said, like I was gonna say, like Tim, he said that the original name was going to be a Morning in America, but then he
I
said,
think it's one of the best songs on this album.
yeah, but then he said that, he could just picture that album cover, and he didn't want to make a
Yeah.
depressing record because he could just picture the artwork
Appeal
for
to
it.
Reason is a very political cover.
Yeah, it is. But then, yeah, I mean, changing the name of the album to Wolves, I think Wolves, the song, is one of the best songs here. I think it's one of the best solos they've done. Yeah,
My main problem with this album is the production. I
yeah.
think the mix sounds like shit.
Yeah, I think the mix is the issue. I think the production, I think also very, by this point, kind of by the numbers Rise Against.
Yeah.
It's a very, I don't want to say generic or typical of them, but it kind of is. I mean, when you think of some of the best stuff that they've done before, like, I mean, honestly, for me, the best songs on this record that I'll come back to are Wolves, Miracle.
Yeah, Miracle, yep.
Those two for sure.
I think of two. I think of The Violence and Morning in America. Those two.
The Violence, Morning in America, Wolves, and Miracle, and like those are really the only songs that come back to you from this record.
I think I wrote down fillers that Bullshit I thought was because they announced a track list ahead of time. When I saw it said Bullshit, I'm like, and Explicit next to it, I'm like, oh, this is gonna hit hard. Then when I heard it, I'm like, this does not hit hard. It's just okay. Like bullshit. Politics of Love is very eh. It's a different change of pace.
I actually for Rise Against more like emotionally charged lyrics. Um, I think Politics of Love, I think psychologically, a lot of people experience that. Like, should you or shouldn't you say or do this in this kind of romantic relationship or this kind of person you're trying to pursue? I think it's a very relatable song. I think in
I
terms
think the
of
most relatable song is Parts Per Million.
yeah, I mean for me, Politics of Love is like a very relatable song.
Yeah.
I think it is for a lot of people.
It's not a relatable album because
It's not a relatable
it's too
album. I
vague.
think I think Politics of Love is a great song on its own. I'm not sure how I feel about, it being on this record though.
Because when you think back to Suffer in the Witness, it's like the approaching curve and everything. Like you feel a connection to it. Make It Stop. You feel a connection because it's in depth of the lyrics of what it's meant to be. But this album, it's just not there. It's not Tim at his best.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean even the last record, yeah, Black Market was Tim when he was better. And even yeah, like I
Yeah,
said, that
People
wasn't
Live
their
Here,
best material
classic.
either.
People Live Here is one of his best lyrical performances ever.
Yeah. Yeah, because People Live Here, it's a great song because it has a very realistic, heartfelt, approach to it, but it's done so in a very sarcastic way.
Yeah, like My God is Better Than Yours.
Yeah,
Like I saw a reaction video where a dude's like, "It is." I'm like, you just missed the entire point of the song.
yeah. Like I think I actually put that in the Rise Against fan group on Facebook.
Yeah, I saw that. I'm like, this dude doesn't know what he's talking about.
Yeah, shout out to Vin and Sori. Yeah, yeah. If you guys know who they are, they've done a couple Rise Against reactions, but yeah. Sometimes I agree with them, sometimes I don't. But yeah, I mean, overall, this album, I think Black Market was better than Wolves. I'll just say
Oh,
that right off the
100%.
gate.
Absolutely.
Black Market was a better album than Wolves, even though Wolves still wasn't their best material.
It's not, but it has good songs,
It has good
but
songs.
not their best songs. Like
I
Black,
think, yeah,
every single album besides this one has multiple songs I come back to.
yeah,
This is one where it's few that I come back to,
yeah.
which
Like
is
I said,
just,
those four songs
and
with
I
Wolves.
don't come back a lot.
Yeah, like I
You know,
said, those four songs I'll come back to on Wolves. Wolves, Morning in America, Miracle, and what
I've
was the
seen a
other
lot of songs off this album live.
and The Violence. Yeah, those four are the four that I'll come back to the most on this record. I
I've
mean, Politics
seen
of Love
Wolves.
actually too. Politics of Love actually too, just because I think it's a great song on its own, and I would listen to that any day. But I wouldn't listen to this album front to back, and
I
be
never do that besides for this video
like I wouldn't
when it
like
came
listen
out.
to this album front to back and be anticipating, waiting for that song to come on.
Yeah. I've seen Wolves, House on Fire, The Violence, Welcome to the Breakdown, Morning in America, and I saw the B-side song Megaphone.
Yeah, Megaphone I think is a good song for a beat side.
Yeah, and so's Broadcast Signal Frequency.
Yeah.
Those songs, it's good that they're B-sides. I don't think they would fit on the album at all.
No, I don't think they would have
And we're
either.
not talking about B-sides like Historia, Calmantium,
Death
for
Blossom.
Appeal to Reason, Lanterns for Endgame, Escape Artist for Black Market. We're not talking about those because then some of those would escalate the score a little bit or demote it a little bit, depending whatever, if it was there. But this album, House on Fire is the worst song that they've ever made, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think either that or bullshit.
I don't come back to
Yeah.
Wolves because I think the production's not good on it and it ruins the experience. I think it's like tinny and it's like over compressed to the point where it's like, eh.
Yeah, I think something that's important to note is that the reason why the production is the way that it is because this was one album that they did not work with Bill Stevenson on. And they didn't write this album in the blasting room like they did for many other records.
How
I
many
think
walls the
Miracle
solo?
actually, I think Miracle and Wolves are lyrically the strongest on this record.
I
And
think Morning in America is
yeah,
the strongest lyrically, and I think Far From Perfect and Morning in America are the two best lyrical songs
Yeah,
on
Far
this
From
album.
Perfect is a great song
'Cause I
lyrically.
know a lot of people that have like far from perfect like artwork with the lyrics. We are goddamn works of art, like all those stuff. The
Yeah,
chorus, but some stuff on this album is just forgettable.
yeah,
Welcome to Breakdown. I know the song, but I'd never listen to that song on purpose.
yeah.
Bullshit
I
is
never.
just why bullshit. It's not a bad song. It does not need to be there. I feel the album is 40 minutes, but I feel like they could have cut it down to a half hour.
Yeah, they probably could have.
Took out bullshit House on Fire. That's probably like 33 minutes, and that would have been better. Because other albums are also like same length, like 40 minutes.
Yeah, about 40 minutes or so for
They're
other.
not. They don't have long albums.
No, they
So,
don't.
but I feel like this could have been cut down. Like some 41 Order and Decline, half-hour long album, all killer no filler with some 41 Order and Decline. It's no bullshit, straight to the point. This they could have cut down stuff, or even I think they could have
Yeah.
waited to have more material, like even have like a Broken Dreams Incorporated like
Yeah,
on the
I
album
think
to
that would have
enhance
worked
the
great on this
album or
record.
something. I think they could have spent a little more time, even though it was 3 years in between releases. I think they could have spent more time with the writing, the mixing. I think they could have done more with the album, and it would be better than well, it wouldn't be better than the Black Market, but it would be something that I would go back to and actually remember.
Yeah, I think yeah, as far as ranking this record, I don't think it's as good as Black Market.
No,
Um I think it is one of their weakest albums.
I think it's their weakest album.
Yeah. I mean other than the Unraveling, I think it just sits at bronze also for me.
I think it's a bronze album also. No, not trash.
Yeah, no.
I thought of Diamond because Rise Against is a band where I would have
You
put
had to.
a lot of band, a lot 3 albums at Diamond, but I think that Suffer and the Witness is much better album than Endgame. So I felt like it was only fair to add an extra level because Ross and I are going to do other episodes of this. Those bands also have stuff that's diamond and gold because there's a distinction between gold and diamond for Isaac. Endgame is gold, but Suffering the Witness is the best thing that they've ever made
Yeah, I think
in
Suffer
every
and the Witness
aspect.
I think Suffer and the Witness in terms of just what it did for the band as a whole and what it did for, what they meant with the name Rise Against, what I was saying much earlier in the video, where they meant their name means something. I think they showed it on this record.
Because there are other bands with the name,
Yeah.
the word against, Rage Against the Machine and Against Me. Rage Against the Machine, they're raging against the machine, and Against Me, they're political, but they're kind of not political. They're a weird band, but we love them. But Rise Against, the first 2 albums are kind of political, and then State of the Union, bam, we're political and we're gonna absolutely destroy. And then every album since then, they're showing that their name is Rise Against for a reason.
Yeah, because they're very good at doing both political and emotionally charged stuff. They have a good mix of both.
I think that's perfectly shown on Siren's song
Yeah,
"When Life Away"
I think Siren Song is the best representation of that.
of their diversity of
Yeah.
how it works.
Yeah,
Because
especially a song like Dancing for Rain, how it has that acoustic
my
kind
second
of
favorite Rise Against song
how it has that
after "Give It
acoustic
All."
kind of riff, and it keeps toggling between that and the more distorted kind of
throughout
rock song.
throughout the entire song.
Yeah,
It
it has
happens.
that good versatility to it. But yeah, I think looking back at how we ranked everything, I think it's pretty legit. I think we did a good job with this.
And Wolves is just they could have spent more time on it.
Yeah,
That's what I think about. I think they could have spent a year or two more on Wolves, and I wouldn't have had a problem with it because after the first time I heard Wolves, I thought I have to wait 3 to 4 years for another album. I was really let down by that album.
yeah,
Like I stayed up till midnight for that release, and I was just so let down by that album, and I thought that they could have done so much more. And I feel I would have given them until 2021, like A Day to Remember is taking forever, but that's not going to be good probably. But uh, they could have Rise Against could have spent a lot more time, and it would have done so much good. Because Broken Dreams Incorporated, I don't know if that's going to be a single. I don't know if that's going to be on the album or not, on the next album, but it's a fantastic song, and an album full of that would have been amazing. And I think
Yeah,
that could have been silver. I think that could have an album with that could be silver.
yeah. I mean, if the next Rise Against album, whenever that comes out, if it's 2021 and it's reminiscent of what Broken Dreams Incorporated sounded like, I think it's going to probably be a silver album. Although we don't know for sure if
I
it's going
think
to
that
sound like
song
that.
kind of combined Appeal to Reason and The Black Market. I
Yeah,
feel like it's like a combo of those albums somehow.
yeah. I'm not sure if that song's going to be on the album or not. I'm not
I
sure.
hope it's not,
Yeah, I think it's better
because I
as
want
a
more material.
standalone. I think, yeah, Broken Dreams Incorporated is better as a standalone song. I don't know if the album is going to sound like that, but if it does, I think it's still going to be a great album.
Another thing about Wolves, it had no ballads on it.
Yeah, it didn't.
If you think about it, the Unraveling had Ever Changing. There was Like the Angel on RPM. There was Swing Life Away on Siren Song. There was Roadside, and I guess you could say The Approaching Curve on Suffer. There was Hero of War
Yeah.
on Appeal. Endgame, I guess it was Make It Stop. I guess. I don't really know on
I'm not
Endgame.
sure if you could call Make It Stop a ballad or not.
Endgame doesn't really have one, but it doesn't need one.
Yeah, Make It Stop doesn't. I mean, Endgame doesn't really have a ballad.
Endgame is very consistent.
It's very consistent, to the point, and I mean, it's Tim's favorite record they've done.
Yes, he talks about broken mirrors
Yeah,
and
it's
Wait
Tim's
for
favorite
Me.
album they've ever written.
Yeah, I've seen
So if that's
interviews where
for,
he always talks
that's
about a lot of those songs.
yeah. So for what it's worth, what consolation that has, I think it speaks a lot to to how it sounds.
Tim is such a creative guy.
Yeah, just the way that he phrases things in his words, the way he poetically says stuff.
And how he uses the instruments to enhance the lyrics, and how he uses the composition to enhance the experience, because he knows what the listener wants to listen to. I feel like because they make albums that they want to hear. They don't just make albums that are like, we're just going to make this shitty thing that we're just going to phone in. They make albums that they want to hear. And
Yeah,
they want to make albums that they're proud of, that they want to be proud of their albums and say, this is what we made. Well, I don't know how they feel about Wolves, but I feel like Wolves, they kind of rushed it for the time they wanted to get out in 2017, because what happened politically in 2016, I feel like they wanted, we're Rise Against, we have to put something out about this. Like, they can't just ignore what happened. So I feel like they kind of rushed it. They could have waited a year or two to
Yeah,
come
and
up with more stuff.
I think with the next album they do, I think it's going to be very I think it's going to be more emotionally based actually than politically based, because
So do I.
I think they're going to touch a lot more on the pathos, emotions of everyone that's, struggled for, now in the last year. And just, I think it's going to probably be their most emotional album.
Yeah. I think it's going to be, well, everybody's going to expect a political album because everything that we've had the past 4 or 5 years. But I feel like they're at a point in their career where they can change it up. They're allowed to. They made political albums. They've made soft. They can do what they want.
Yeah, they've proved themselves by this point. They can do
I
it.
said this about AFI before. They don't have anything left to prove.
They have nothing left to prove. They've proved themselves already.
They've been in the game for 20 years. They don't.
I do think they're going to have
Yeah.
like a mix of that political stuff, obviously, but
Yeah.
also much more emotionally focused.
I'm excited for the next album.
Yeah,
I want it to be a gold or diamond album. I'm hoping that it is, because I know that they're capable of putting out another one. They're absolutely capable of putting out another one.
Yeah.
Let's wrap this up.
Yeah.
So thanks for watching, guys. We really appreciate it. We'll see you in the next one, because hopefully we'll do some more episodes. Russ, you have anything to say quickly?
No, I just hope that you guys enjoyed this. Yeah, I know it's a long video.
If you
But if
watched
you
the
keep
whole
watching,
thing,
hang in
thank
there.
you.
I think there's some things that we've said here and there throughout the video that are worth noting.
I'll leave some timestamps throughout of
Yeah,
each
I think that
album.
would be helpful too.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, I mean, if you love Rise Against as much as us, feel free to watch the whole thing. Yeah, it was fun to make,
It was fun to go back on their whole discography and just
Yeah,
think about
it's
why I
fun to
love them
talk
so
about.
much and how much they've done for me in the past 10 years.
Yeah.
So that was a nice experience. So I want to thank you for coming on. We're done.